Okay, well, we're going to get started because I know, Angie, you have so much information to share and such great, fantastic information and data and strategies. So, my name is Casey Reimer, for all of you who don't know me, and I am the Professional Development Chair for DCD. So, the Division of Communication, Language, and Deaf or Hard of Hearing. And thank you so much for joining us tonight and welcoming Angela Kuhn, who is going to be talking to us about cued American English. And so, just a few notes moving forward. If you can turn off your video while Angie is presenting, so then the interpreter will be spotlighted for everybody. If you want to spotlight the interpreter as well, you can click on the interpretation button on the bottom of your screen. Captions will also be available on the bottom of your Zoom panel as well. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and Angie, I can monitor that chat for you during your presentation.
Sure.
So, with all that being said, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing all of your expertise with our members. So, Angie, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, is that good? Suddenly I can't see what I could see before, so that's frustrating.
Oh, we can see your screen, your opening title screen.
Oh, okay, that's perfect.
Mhm.
Okay. So good evening. My name is Angela Kuhn, and I am it's giving me a whole new thing that I didn't see before. Really sorry. There we go. Show meeting. That's thank you. Okay. I'm Angela Kuhn. I am the Assistant Superintendent at the Illinois School for the Deaf in Jacksonville, Illinois. My contact information, I was asked to share this at the very beginning in case the recording goes awry. And my contact information, best way to contact me usually is via email at angela.kuhn, Kuhn, @illinois.gov. So I was asked to come tonight to talk to you about Cued American English and how we use it here in our program at the Illinois School for the Deaf in Jacksonville. And I decided to call this a hidden gem because, I think cued speech as our Cued American English has been not widely utilized over the years for a variety of reasons, and we've seen really great success and benefits with it here as part of our bilingual program at ISD. So I do like to share it with others, and as we get into it, you'll see that I wasn't really so big on the idea in the beginning either, but eventually I did come around to how it could benefit the students that we're working with. So professionally, I am a graduate of McMurray College. This is basically the slide where you learn how old people are, right? This is the introduction slide, and you can do the math and be like, oh, wow, she's going to be 50. So I graduated with the deaf education degree from McMurray College back in 1998. And then I did get my master's degree in educational leadership from Lewis University in 2005. The next two sections are about my additional training that I've had regarding bilingual education, specifically for deaf and hard of hearing students. So way back in 1998 and 1999, we had a program here that was sponsored by Gallaudet University, Steve Nover at ISD, and I jumped right on board, and it was called Star Schools back in the day. But it was a 2-year program, and we did a lot of work to bilingual education for deaf kids. Then I took another training when I became an administrator in 2007, and I went to Gallaudet for a language planning and leadership conference. It was a 5-day conference where it just enhanced language planning skills and working with students in a bilingual environment who are deaf. I have had beginner, intermediate, and advanced cued speech trainings for several years. I've been an educator and an administrator, and I'm part of an organization, a nonprofit called Kuhn Incorporated. And I'm the vice president of that organization. These are my people, and I only include this because my husband, Craig here, he is profoundly deaf, and we use American Sign Language in our home when we communicate. And then this little guy over here, he's not really little anymore, he's 18. We adopted him from Russia when he was 2. He is also profoundly deaf, but he is bilaterally implanted, and he has some other additional disabilities. He has an intellectual disability and cerebral palsy. So he came with kind of a lot of issues, but he does great. And for communication, he does primarily use audition and spoken English to communicate, but also uses American Sign Language, obviously, to communicate with his father. And he also understands cued American English. It is challenging for him to produce cues, however, because of cerebral palsy. And so it's hard for him to be, his fine motor skills are not really defined enough to be able to make the proper cues on his mouth. So the other people are just like regular old hearing kids. So no one cares about that, right? We just like popped them out and they're fine. So we're just going to start with an introduction to acute speech. I don't really know how much everyone knows about acute speech. I know that I knew very little about it however many years ago it's been now. I think we're like on year 15 when we first started this here at ISD. I did not know much about acute American English at all. So, I'm going to tell you our little secret and see how you feel about it. The original thinking, if you're unsure, was from Dr. Cornett, and he was thinking about how the phonemes of speech look if they looked clearly different from each other on the mouth, just like they sound different to those of us who have normal hearing and are able to acquire English that way, then a profoundly deaf child could learn language through vision. And by language, he is referring to a spoken language through vision almost as easily as the hearing, he said normal. It's a long time ago. Normal child learns it from hearing. So that was his original thinking when he started his journey on developing acute American English. So the history is that it was developed at Gallaudet in 1965, 1966. It was Dr. Orrin Cornett. He was at that time the vice president of long-range planning and a professor of acoustics. He was a physicist and he was an inventor, so he was probably a pretty smart man. His goal was to determine why the average reading level of Gallaudet students was approximately the 3rd to 4th grade level. And that is often what we still see today in deaf education, that literacy is a real challenge with the students that we serve for a variety of reasons. But that was what he was addressing, literacy. He was not focused on spoken English, having deaf kids be able to hear, use audition, or use spoken English more effectively, improve their speech skills. That wasn't his goal. His goal was literacy when he started this process. He determined that many deaf individuals had weak access to English structures, and that phonemic awareness was necessary to develop strong reading and writing skills. And I think, and we'll talk about this again later, but science of reading is bringing us back around to that idea that phonemic awareness is crucial to really developing strong readers. He wanted a way for deaf and hard of hearing individuals to have clear access to English for the purpose of providing a way for hearing impaired children to become good readers. So again, his emphasis was on literacy. It was on reading. It was never about encouraging speech development. That was not his goal. It was not about articulation. He never intended to replace American Sign Language. That was also not his goal. So that's the history of how he came to wanting to develop the system of acute American English. What he concluded at the end was that he had assumed that deaf people were bookworms, and they were served by reading as their clear window to the world. So they were just able to read, and then that's how a lot of reading is what taught them how to be good readers. But after a few months of study, he was convinced that the underlying cause of their reading problems was the lack of any reasonable way to learn spoken language. So spoken languages typically are intended to be acquired naturally. So we don't have to teach them to hearing kids. They're just acquired. They're just able to like take them in as they live their lives. And deaf and hard of hearing children don't have that same access. So without any way to learn spoken language, they couldn't use speech for communication. They couldn't become good lip readers or learn to read. So Dr. Cornett said, I really started with the conclusion that what was needed was a convenient way to represent the spoken language accurately through vision in real time. So the goal from the beginning was to take spoken English at the phonemic level and make it accessible to deaf and hard of hearing individuals. So that was his guiding conclusion, and that is how he moved forward developing the system. So the system, again, I'm not sure of everyone's background information. I think in college I spent about one day in one of my college courses talking about cued speech, and it was kind of like a yeah, they developed this system, but it didn't do any good, so we're not really going to talk about it. And then it didn't come back up again for me until about 2010 or 2011 here at ISD. So I didn't know much about it. So I assume often people don't know very much about the system itself because we just kind of disregard it. But it is a visual communication mode that uses 8 hand shapes and 4 different placements near the face in combination with mouth movements, the mouth movements of speech, to make phonemes of spoken language look different from each other. So that's the formal definition. The four placements on the mouth are like at the chin, at the cheek, at the throat, and then to the side. You have to move your mouth. You have to make the mouth movements for Cued American English to be clear, but you do not have to use any voice support. That's not required, but moving your mouth is required. This is the whole chart. Here, it fits on like it can fit it on a little index card. It's kind of akin, often people compare it to like learning to type, because if you already, like specifically for hearing parents, if they already know spoken English, then learning this code for making spoken English visually accessible, if they just practice that code like we practice to learn to type, then it can be really learned fairly quickly. You can learn the whole system in about a 6-hour workshop, and then with practice, you can really develop your skill set over time. But parents can be able to communicate kind of effectively without changing their vocabulary and feeling stressed about not knowing the next sign or concept that they need to explain to the deaf and hard of hearing child, because if they just have a coded system for the language they already know, that can be helpful. But it can fit on a card, and so I don't have it back here anymore because I have a school schedule, but like this is my work ID, and like we're able to like put a card back here when we were first learning, and we could like cheat and remember which hand shape we needed to use for a sound when we were first learning the system here. So cued speech. It was developed to aid in the acquisition of literacy skills. That was the purpose. It does not require any spoken English or any hearing. You do not have to be able to. Oftentimes people say when I have this conversation, because it can get kind of contentious, they say, well, cued speech is for hard of hearing kids. And my response to that is always, I mean, hard of hearing kids, oftentimes they have enough access to spoken English that they're able to acquire it more readily than their profoundly deaf peers. So cued speech to me, or cued American English, we call it both things, is more important for those kids who are profoundly deaf and really have no way to access English. Even if they have, I mean, great, if they have full unfettered access to American Sign Language, I love that for them. That's great. It's going to help our academic skills. It's going to be an amazing journey. But I would want them to have cued American English, to have access to English in its natural form, its primary form. It does show the phonemes of spoken languages. Cued American English has been adapted to more than 60 different languages. So obviously here at ISD, we're only using it for English, but it has been adapted to other languages as well. It is not a language. This was a big debate back in the beginning of our cued speech journey here at ISD. We don't consider cued speech a language, and we're going to talk about this kind of more in a minute, but it's a representation of English. So like you can speak in English, or you can cue in English. Like these are ways, it's the primary form of the language, but it's not, you could write in English as well, but it's not considered a language on its own. And if you're cueing in Spanish, then you can speak in Spanish, or you can cue in Spanish, or you can write in Spanish. It is a visual mode of communication. And I already said this, but it has been adapted to more than 60 languages. So that, in a nutshell, is your down and dirty description of what cued speech is. The next several slides, these are things about English that I'm sure any of us who work with deaf and hard of hearing kids and we're teaching them literacy skills, we really see these challenges that the English language bring to the table, and why it's so hard for deaf and hard of hearing kids to really understand English when they're unable to acquire it naturally like their hearing peers. So the first is just phonemic awareness. And so we cue not based on the letter. So like the letter A obviously has several different sounds, and apple, and about, and able, and father, but we cue based on the sound that the A is making and not on the letter itself. So, but that trips kids up who don't understand the phonemic aspect of the English language, because they see the A and they assume it's always making the same sound in the English language, and it is not. Sight rhymes don't necessarily equal phonetic rhymes. This is really hard too. These words here all look like they're spelled exactly the same, but they do not sound the same. So we have tough and though and cough and bow and through. So that's 5 different sounds for the same spelling, O-U-G-H. And that's hard. That's hard to teach to deaf and hard of hearing kids. Our hearing kids are able to acquire that naturally. So when we go to teach the lesson on the sounds that O-U-G-H can make, they've already heard it so many times throughout their lives that it's not so hard for them to learn. But so sight rhymes do not equal phonetic rhymes. Also, phonetic rhymes do not equal sight rhymes. So these all do sound the same, but they're spelled differently. So tear, and beer. They all sound the same, but it's an EA or an IE or an EE. So we have lessons specifically designed to teach these concepts to kids, but it's really hard if you haven't been able to acquire that information naturally before you come to the table of trying to read and write. English semantics are very challenging. Contractions are a problem. So like won't is really will not, but and that's what we would sign usually if we had a student who was reliant on visual communication, so either sign language or cute American English, and they didn't have the auditory oral skills to be able to understand won't through audition alone. But if we were going to sign that, we would probably sign will not, I won't, or we can cue it and say won't. And so that is going to be the exact description of the word. Synonyms are also the same. I mean, they have the same sign often. So we see this a lot with our kids here at school. They'll map the one word they know to a sign. So like happy can be happy or glad, or we can say happy or glad. So we can give them the exact English word that we're trying to get at through cute American English, and not try to force them to memorize every English word that could go with a sign, and that would be all sight word, whole word reading, and that's very hard. The research is clear on whole word reading and trying just to memorize sight words. Specificity of language. So words like turquoise or magenta, those are very specific words, and we can finger spell them. We absolutely can fingerspell them if we're using American Sign Language. We can use spoken English when we're working with deaf and hard of hearing kids who are on an auditory oral track, then that often works well. But if we have a visually reliant deaf and hard of hearing child and we really want them to get at the words magenta and turquoise, or we want them to get at the word high heel shoe, that's very specific. So things that we want them to know the exact English for, cueing that really does it with ease. And then of course we have multiple meaning words, which we all know that one English word can have several different meanings. And again, once upon a time, we used the Fairview curriculum here at ISD eons ago, like very long time ago, late 90s. And that was based entirely on trying to get kids to memorize the multiple meanings for a single word. So like the word run, we would teach them it could be running, or your water could be running, or your nose could be running. And there's a lot of different, we could be running a business. We could be running a program, the director of something. So that's a lot of different signs for one English word. And it's a lot of different meanings to expect kids to memorize when they haven't had the opportunity to really acquire it naturally like their hearing peers have. Meaning is tricky. Obviously, the meaning of words that could sound and look alike. Like in this sentence, she read right after the red light, it's right to turn right. I mean, that's a lot. So there's a lot of different meanings for words that sound exactly the same in that sentence. And those meanings we would cue it the same regardless. And really the expectation is just like it is with hearing kids, that you understand the meaning of each word based on the context and your exposure to English prior to encountering a sentence such as this. English syntax, the order of words, that's really hard for deaf kids, especially those, again, who are visually reliant. So deaf kids who are not able to rely only on audition for learning. The cat hid behind the sofa. Well, I mean, there are some sign systems. I guess I haven't used an English sign system for so long. But my husband would tell you that when he came to school here, in the 80s, I guess. He graduated from ISD and he came here at age 7, that very much during the school day, they were using signed English systems. So they would have signed that sentence like the cat hid behind the sofa. So it would have been and maybe they would have even said sofa or something to get to sofa instead of couch. That's not really my skill set, but they used a very English sign system to give students the exact English phrasing and sentences they wanted to get at. But we've really transitioned, especially at schools for the deaf and culturally, to using American Sign Language for more fluid communication with deaf and hard of hearing children who communicate primarily that way. So when we really want to get at English, which is a separate language from ASL, then using cued American sentence such as this is going to give the student the English access, as opposed to me interpreting that into ASL, which would look more like cat, what do, hid, where, couch, behind. And that sounded nothing like the cat hid behind the sofa. So there's 2 different languages that we are working with. And so this is just these are examples in English that are really hard to teach every single component to someone who is acquiring it as a second language. Learning it as a second language, not acquiring it when you're teaching it. Word endings are another big deal. Kids often leave off the word endings of things because it's hard to learn when you need to say 5 cups. And we can sign it visually. We can sign there are multiple cups. We're going to do 5 cups. We can finger spell 5 cups, and just to emphasize it. We also can cue it 5 cups. So there are different ways that we can show the English, but cued speech really lends itself to ensuring that deaf and hard of hearing students are exposed to those word endings that are really important to using English correctly in its written form. Idioms. We've all done the idiom unit, right? Like everyone, I remember being in college and thinking like, I love that I'm going to teach idioms. It's so fun to teach these things and ask the kids to memorize. I'm going to blow a fuse and teach them that the concept means I'm going to lose it, like I'm going to blow up. That's a great fun unit to teach. We still should teach the unit, but also giving them the opportunity as they grow before they get to the place in their education where they're doing an idiom unit. They should be able to understand idioms through the air, just like a hearing kid would. Like I know we all say to little kids, like, oh my gosh, it's raining cats and dogs out there. That's a really common idiom we use with little kids when we encounter a storm or, a really difficult, really crazy rainy day. And a little kid, a 3 or 4 year old, would totally understand, like, oh, it's raining cats and dogs. My mom clearly is saying, like, it is really raining out here because I see the trees blowing and it's a little bit of hail. It seems a bit scary. So idioms are a thing that, yes, they're fun to teach, and we often still have to do that as a unit, but there are some idioms that are really common that we could use with kids when they're much younger, and they should have that exposure. But we wouldn't sign it's raining cats and dogs. We could just give them the English through Cute American English. So then here it is. This is the secret. This is it. Like, and I'm not even asking everyone here to sign like a non-disclosure agreement or anything. Like, it's the secret you can take out to wherever you want to go and wherever you want to work and teach it to whomever else you want to. But what can Cute Speech do? What can it do for you from an educational perspective? It does promote literacy skills. It provides opportunities for students to acquire English, not learn it as a second language, but to acquire it. It does allow for the development of pre-literacy skills, which again have been really emphasized as we've come into our research about the science of reading. So like rhyming, alliteration, letter naming, phonemic awareness, all of the things. So it does do those things. It does clear up any ambiguity in speech reading. So if you have a deaf and hard of hearing individual who perhaps does rely heavily, they're an auditory oral student, but they rely heavily on speech reading, it does clear up the things that are really hard to see, like mat, bat, and pat all look exactly the same. But if you add the cue of mat, bat, and bat, that clears it up for someone who is reliant on speech reading. Cues alone are ambiguous, which is why you do have to use the mouth movement. So you would cue ham, ram, sat, and sit, all exactly the same. So without mouth movement, they all look exactly the same. But when you add your mouth movement, then they are cleared up. I intentionally didn't use voice for that part. Ham, ram, sat, sit. So that is important for using Cute American English and why you have to have mouth movements. It can promote oral skills. So this does help with oral skills. It reinforces auditory skills that the user might have. So it can be supportive of students who are on an auditory oral path in their education. And there are plenty, I think, of professionals out there who are working on the audiology side of things, who discourage kind of visual support because they really want to develop those listening and spoken language skills. I've had this conversation often with my son's audiologist. And again, he's bilaterally implanted. He's primarily auditory oral. This is the path we chose for him, but we never shied away from signing or cueing with him. And it's had no lasting impacts on whether or not he was able to learn to listen and speak as effectively as he can, given his other limitations. So it can promote the skills that are necessary for students who are on an auditory oral path. It reinforces speech skills because it provides a visual link between the cue and the sound production. My speech language pathologists here at ISD will often use Cute American English with speech and language setting to help reinforce some of the skills that they're teaching specific to articulation. It does not automatically lead, though, to oral skills. So kids aren't going to become oral because you cue with them. If your goal is for a student to learn to use spoken English and be articulate, that will require training. Cued speech is not the avenue all by itself. It's a reinforcement. It can be supportive, but it by itself will not develop oral skills in our students. So all that to say, accessibility and early language learning is still critical. And this information here came out of the VL2 research brief once upon a time, that all children need early exposure to a rich, accessible first language. And for deaf children, even those who have access to auditory input through cochlear implants or hearing aids, this by necessity includes visual access. And the other thing that's really important to remember is those early years are always crucial. So even when our students are exposed to cute American English here, if it's a later age, it's tricky because language deprivation is very real in the population that we work with, and the damage that can be done is really hard to work against sometimes. So having cute American English, access to American Sign Language, great auditory or oral training and use of amplification devices at those earliest ages is still critical. So cute American English can't be added to a program and bam, every kid you work with is magically able to read and write. It still does not overcome language deprivation on its own and how that impacts the work that we do. I'm not going to show this today because we have not that much time, but this is a video. Once Twista, he's a famous rapper. I don't really know him myself, but he made this video and the link is here on the screen. And I assume maybe Casey will share my slides later with this group. But it's just kind of a fun video that shows cute speech, and Twista is not cueing. The other people in the video are doing the cueing, but he is fast rapping. He's like the fastest rapper in the world or something. And so he made this video in collaboration with some native cuers. And it's kind of just a fun video to watch. So if you have time later, you can do that. So here at ISD, I think our journey is important to share with others. And it really has been kind of a long journey. So how did we get here? We're a residential school for the deaf. We're the only one in the whole country using cute American English in our program. It has not come without lots of challenges, some controversy. So how did we get to this place here in Illinois? Well, we do pride ourselves in being a bilingual school. So that is what our goal has been before and since we've introduced cute American English as part of our program. But what is ASL English bilingual education? It really is the idea of additive bilingualism and the design of developmental bilingual programs. So our goal is to develop social and academic proficiencies in both ASL and English. Educators and ASL and English bilingual programs consider the very needs of deaf children. And this, I mean, I don't know what everyone's careers are out there, but this is so true about the diversity of kids that come to us in programs. Some have had full access to ASL. Some have had partial access to English only before they get to a formal educational program. Some have had simultaneous access to both ASL and English, or limited access to either language. They've had limited to no access to either language. So within deaf programs, for sure, we see a lot of diversity among our student population, and their needs are all very different because they have very diverse language coming into the program and what their needs are. And it's really hard to make that happen for everybody. And get them where they need to be. And with a low incidence disability, we can't usually group students very effectively. So, sometimes we have in a classroom one student who's had full access to ASL and 3 kids who have no language, but we have to keep them all together. So how do we take next steps? So that's the challenge that we all face when we're working with deaf and hard of hearing kids. So then we're always considering here at ISD communication versus language. And we probably, all of us here in this group, understand the differences, but communication is really just the process of conveying or sharing ideas or feelings. This can be taught and improved throughout your life. Your communication skills can get better. I promise you, I think my husband thinks my communication skills could be better sometimes, right? Like he's like, this is not how we treat people. So there are lots of different specificities of communication that we all can improve on throughout our lifetime. It's not limited to those early years. Um, Communication happens for babies before language is developed. So they're communicating very early on. Obviously, they are crying when they're hungry or their diaper's wet. So they are communicating before formal language is developing. Deaf children can communicate their wants and needs with limited language, right? So we all have these kids, right, who their parents say like, well, no, they can tell, I know these things, they can tell me. Well, but there's a lot of pointing and maybe a lot of gesturing, but a lot of formal language. So we do have a lot of deaf and hard of hearing kids who are capable of communicating their wants and needs, but that doesn't mean they have formalized language structures in place that they're using. They're just communicating. Modalities are forms of communication. So that can include signs, speech, and gestures. Those are modalities or just different forms of communication. Language, on the other hand, is a very structured system of communication that consists of grammar and vocabulary. So language is much more structured, it has rules, it's very well defined. There is a limited window for language learning, and that is through age 8. And we, again, all of us in this field should be well aware of that. But we think through about age 8, but we really know 0 to 3 are the most crucial years for language development. Language is intended to be caught, not taught. So often in programs such as the one that I work for, when we're teaching English to our deaf and hard of hearing kids, we're teaching it as a second language. So they don't have the opportunity to catch the language. It is intended to just be acquired naturally. That's how all of us who have hearing children, that's how all of them really developed their language. They just were able to be normal babies and kids, and they were able to acquire all the language that they needed just through natural interactions. Reading and writing are considered language skills. So literacy does fall under language. So this is another thing, obviously, at ISD, we're a very language-rich program. It's a high focus on what we're working with. So there are different forms of language. There's language in its primary form. Now, the languages we're speaking of today, there's lots of languages out there. I understand that. We're going to talk about American Sign Language and English. That's it. We're talking about American Sign Language and English. That's what the program does. So, but this applies generally to languages, forms of language. The primary forms, either for American Sign Language, sorry, not for American Sign Language, for English is spoken. That is the primary form of English. American Sign Language, the primary form is signs. Then we want to transition to the secondary forms of language. So for English, the secondary form is written English. So this is when we teach kids to read and write in English. There really is no secondary form of American Sign Language. So there is a secondary form of English. But the expectation in the world of languages is that you acquire a language in its primary form, then you're taught the language in its secondary form. Which is why we weren't taught how to read and write until we got into kindergarten. That's when that formal process of teaching the English language in its secondary form started for most of us. Typical language development in the primary form is that you're exposed to language in the home from birth. And by age 6, you have approximately 15,000 words, a fluent command of your native language and the structures, and that language has been acquired and not taught. So those are all the details of the primary form. I should note, because I love this man quite a lot, these slides I did adapt from Dr. Daniel Kuhn. He is a professor in the psychology department at Gallaudet University, and he was raised a Cure. He obviously now works at Gallaudet. He is a fluent user of American Sign Language, but this is part of what he presents when he talks about the need for cute American English and the education, the bilingual programming for deaf and hard of hearing kids. So then language development is secondary form. Children begin to learn the connection between the primary form of the language and then the secondary form around preschool age. And one of the stories that I really share often about this is that one time my son was 4 and he came in the bathroom and I was getting ready and he's like doing a little 4-year-old, like writing a list because he was just being creative, pretend to play. And he looked at me and he said, like, well, what are the ingredients that we need? So he wanted to write down the list of ingredients. But at age 4, he knew the word ingredients. We talked about it probably hundreds of times since he had been born. But there's no way that anyone would have the expectation that he would know how to spell or read the word ingredients at that age, because that wouldn't be a realistic expectation for him. But when he got to kindergarten or preschool, when they started connecting his knowledge of the word ingredients in its primary form, and then he's asked to learn how to read and write these words, eventually he already had that word there. It was ready to go. So he knew the language before he was being asked to write it in a secondary form. And for deaf and hard of hearing kids, sadly, that's just not always true. They might say like, my ingredients, but this gives me no connection to the actual English print that you're going to be expected to learn later. So I think that day I was going to present and it kind of struck me that morning because I was like, that right there, that's what we're talking about. He's 4. And I didn't ask him. I think maybe I did say like, how do you spell that? Just as like a little game. And he was like, D-Y-B. He knew some letters, but he was nowhere close to being able to use any kind of encoding skills to be able to spell that word back to me. So for the bilingual child, now if we're talking about 2 spoken languages, so for example, English and Spanish. So maybe this child lives in a home where the mom's speaking English and the dad's speaking Spanish. For both languages, as babies, they're able to naturally acquire either language in the spoken form, English and Spanish. They have one parent who speaks English all the time, who speaks Spanish all the time. So they've been able to readily acquire, without a lot of effort on their part, both languages. Then later, they move to the secondary form of learning both languages in their secondary form, which is written. So that's how a bilingual child, and most bilingual research is based on this idea that languages go from a primary form to a secondary form. And it works. I mean, it can work, right? So this is the idea that we would go from a primary form before we go to the secondary form. But for the bilingual deaf child, it's a little different, right? So they can learn. Now, this is assuming the child, again, relies heavily on visual access to language to be able to acquire it. So assuming maybe they didn't have auditory nerves and they can't be implanted, there's no usable audition, or they have hearing aids, but the parents can't ever get them to wear them. We've heard all the stories. We know that sometimes that path doesn't work out like we think it will. But assuming they need visual communication and they're using American Sign Language. So they're going to learn how to sign because that's the primary form of American Sign Language, is using signs. But there's not really a secondary form. Like video maybe kind of documents it if you take video footage of it, but there's not really another form. It's just through the air communication through American Sign Language. Then we have English. And we don't really have an effective way for the profoundly deaf child to access English in its primary form through the air. Like, how are we supposed to do that? So when I studied bilingual education for deaf and hard of hearing kids back in 1998, the thinking was they have a solid foundation in ASL. That's great. And then they're going to come to school and then we're going to skip we're going to skip this primary form of English, and we're just going to teach them how in English. But there's no real bridge that goes from sign language to written English. And that's where we're trying to go, but we continue to have struggles. Like we continue to see that there's lots of challenges with trying to take even the most fluent deaf of deaf ASL using 5-year-old and then try to teach them English as a second language, because we have not given them ever the opportunity to acquire it naturally in its primary form. And so these were all the thoughts that we had here at ISD that got us to these places. So our cued speech journey started in 2007, 2008, and we started really using direct instruction curriculum and visual phonics. So we really started with visual phonics and not with cued American English. We implemented it that way, and their students were making progress. They understood phonics. They were able to do that, but they still weren't really, there was not really reading comprehension improvement that we were seeing. And a lack of knowledge of English language was believed to be the cause. During the 2010-2011 school year, recommendations were made by our reading consultant. So we worked in conjunction with a reading consultant, and she recommended that we increase the use of English in its face-to-face form or through the air, that we use English as the primary language of instruction for literacy lessons, so reading and language primarily, and we create a greater balance between reading and writing instruction. So we were really focused on reading, but we needed to do more writing. So those were the recommendations. So two of my educators, this is where I tell you about my eye roll moment. They decided to explore the use of cued speech because they wanted to achieve these goals that were recommended, but still maintain our school's philosophy of separating the languages. So essentially, our reading consultant was saying, go back to really signing in English systems, using the ED, the ING endings, all of the things that we had moved away from for a very long time. I raised my hand, so I guess I have a question. I'm not sure. So all these things. And so I had two educators who said, they went to this cued speech workshop, and they came back and they bebopped in my office and they said, you are not going to believe what we want to do. We have the best idea ever. They told me about their hidden gem. And I said, please. I was like, cued speech was developed a long time ago, ladies. So if it was going to work, I think it would have taken off by now. So that was my initial response to their proposal. But luckily for all the students that I work with and for everyone else that works here at ISD, I backed down and I let them carry on. So they also, our reading specialist changed on campus in the summer of 2009, and she read this book, which it's kind of it's been a while now, but this was written by Dr. Beverly Trezek, who was the person who was our reading consultant at that time. And our reading specialist said, hey, Dr. Trezek, I have a question. Your book really talks about cued speech a lot more than visual phonics, yet you brought visual phonics to our school. So make it make sense. And honestly, Dr. Trezek needed to get her research done. And, cued speech, unbeknownst to me at the time, came with kind of a lot of controversy, and a lot of turmoil was caused by the journey we soon would take. But the reading in this book is what really convinced our reading specialist that we needed to pursue something different than visual phonics. I'm not going to go through this. This is just why we went from one to the other, because we're going to get run on time because I talk too much. But we went with cued speech primarily because you can use it conversationally through the air. Visual phonics is very limited to the word, maybe short sentence level, but it's not intended to be used for natural communication. And again, we just keep going back to we needed to give them the opportunity to acquire English naturally through, but visual phonics was not taking us there. So during our middle years, we did a pilot project with cued speech. Those two educators who bombarded me in my office did a little pilot project. All of our educators on campus received training in cued speech prior to the start of the school year. We implemented it from 2012 to 2016 across campus. It varied how, it depended on the content, on the educational needs of the student, on the staff and student capacity for using cued speech, but we continually kept track of data. We consistently monitored and shared that information with stakeholders. Tensions were high. It was not really great. It is a very controversial topic. We are a residential school for the deaf. I do still consider us to be very important part of developing the cultural aspect of our students and their deafness, and helping them identify and feel good about what they can do as deaf and hard of hearing individuals in our society. That's still an important part of what we do, but we also really wanted to focus on literacy instruction. But during that whole time period, it was kind of rough. Tensions were high. People were unhappy. We do use the direct instruction curriculum for reading, language, and math. It's a scripted curriculum. It's just there. It'll work for the company or anything, but this is the curriculum that we've used since 2007, 2008. We just updated our reading and language curriculum actually to the Reading Mastery Transformations program. Some of our stories were talking about the future being 2020, and so we thought maybe it was time because that wasn't the future anymore. Right now, what are we doing? We continue to use cute speech in our classrooms, primarily depending on the student IEPs. So it's not used in every classroom across campus. You don't see cute speech everywhere you go here, but we do still use it in our classrooms. Most readily, we use it in our elementary program. This year, our elementary program is covering grades preschool through fifth grade, but we did have a large group of students, which I'll show you their test scores in a minute, who have come from preschool all the way through. And last year, as seventh graders, we moved our sixth graders this year too, but last year, as seventh graders, they moved to our junior senior high program. And so then it's increased the use over there as well, naturally, because it was kind of a large group of students. This past school year, we had 58 students in elementary. Of those, there were 9 classrooms. 7 of those 9 classrooms primarily used cute speech during the school day for all academic instruction, and that includes approximately 45 of the students. Other classrooms utilize cute speech more as an instructional tool as needed. So you do see it most readily used. We have some teachers here who are cueing a large percentage of their school day. Some teachers who cue a few words a day, some teachers who do nothing. It's very dependent. Again, we're special education, so we do let our students' IEPs and their needs drive the educational decisions that we make. So it's not a blanket, everyone here will be using cued American English. And some of our kids are auditory oral. They can't sign or really cue. They really function auditory orally, and we have FM systems and they use their devices, and that's an important part of our program as well. So we have a lot of diversity on our campus. But we've been very excited about all this science of reading talk because we feel like we've been talking about this for a long time. And for a lot of deaf programs, the science of reading has caused them some headache, and they're really working to fight legislation that requires schools to follow this concept because they say it doesn't apply to deaf students. And I just respectfully disagree with that theory, because I do think that it is going to make the strongest readers, and I'm going to show you some data that shows you that's probably right. I'm not going to show you a video right now, again, because we're down to 10 minutes to go. So maybe I'll show you a video later, but we'll see. These scores are some longitudinal reading scores. They're 2 different students, neither of whom have any secondary disabilities. So this was from the start of when Cued American English was first incorporated into their educational programs here at ISD until they left, till they exited our program. So as you can see, the blue lines are the student. This is the NWA MAP assessment for reading that I used to gather this data. This is the blue line is the student's RIT score on that assessment. And the green line is what is the grade level norm expectation for each grade that they progressed through. These yellow lines for student B, that was our year of COVID. We had remote learning. I like to document that in there just because I think remote learning was impactful. But as you can see, like student A in 4th grade was significantly behind. Now he had some sign language, he was using American Sign Language, but his reading skills there was quite a deficit. But by the time he was in the 8th grade, his scores, he was outscoring the grade level expectation for an 8th grader. This student here, this student has primary language spoken in his home is Swahili. He just graduated last year. He's been able to go to Gallaudet. As you can see, he also started in 2nd grade, way behind in school. And both these students too, by the way, are really visually reliant for communication and language. They cannot rely on audition alone. They must have Cued American English or American Sign Language to be able to access language that is presented to them. And again, by the time he went to 5th grade, now he did not. He had a moment here where he was at grade level in the 5th grade. I will say that during his high school years, we are at fault for having not provided him with as much cued America had given him during his elementary years. So he transitioned his 8th grade year into our junior senior high program, and his use of cute American English in the classroom reduced significantly when he made that transition. But both students are great examples of the progress that can be made in reading. These two students, I chose two students. Again, every student that I chose for these things are visually reliant. So I didn't choose kids who are great implant users and have been able to acquire English through audition, because that's kind of cheating. But these students both present with a secondary disability. And so you can see that we have continued to make progress. Specifically, student C has made really great progress over the years. Again, the yellow lines were COVID, and we did remote learning for a year. And here now this was spring of last year of his 11th grade year. And he is, I would have never expected this kind of achievement would have come out of this student. And he is a deaf student from deaf parents. So, but that was not the achievement I would have thought I would have seen out of him over the years. He started off really behind in English in his early years, and he's really made great progress. This student has made not as great of progress, but is still making gains over time. As you can see, he's the primary reason I like to leave the COVID in there. His attendance was tricky during that time. Reading scores, these two students, I like to share them because they have both had Cute American English in their educational programming since preschool. So these are two kids who are currently 8th graders here. They both, again, require visual access for communication and language, and they have started from the beginning. We started giving them formalized assessments. They have been above grade level norms from the beginning and have continued. And that just goes to show the earlier we can use it and start it, incorporate it into the program, the better off we are. Both use American Sign Language at home and have great ASL skills as well. This is more typically what we see. So this was, I chose all the students that graduated last year in 2025. Not all, I took out the ones who were here for additional time or have significant intellectual disabilities. So these are our typical deaf or hard of hearing students. Some may have a secondary disability of ADHD, maybe a speech language impairment, but generally speaking, this is more what we see in our profession. So these students, we had one who achieved this yellow bar, which were grade level expectations. The red indicates end of 11th grade expectations, so just 1 year behind. Again, there was only 2 who achieved that. And then our typical 3rd grade level expectations is here in this black line. So this is more typically what we see. These students are diverse backgrounds, came here at different times, came here with different, it's like that slide about bilingual education. Some had great access to American Sign Language, some had great access to English, some had access to both, some had access to none. So it's just a very typical look at what we see. And as you can see, six.
And just give you a 1-minute warning to wrap up. I want to make sure we get hard lines.
I need more than 1 minute, Nick. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
understand.
I'll hurry. I'm gonna hurry. I'm gonna hurry.
It's okay. You're fine.
I
And then
took stuff out.
anyone who has any questions for Angela in the recording or tonight, please feel free to reach out. We'll make sure that she gets those questions. I just want to throw them in there. Angela, the last bit of the time is yours.
Thank you. Okay, stop talking. These next scores are the same group of students. They're a group of 8 students. It's really hard to get data, I think, that's consistent in our low incidence disability. These kids have all been at ISD with Cute American English in their instruction every year since either preschool or kindergarten. So really consistently this year, they're 8th graders. So these are their scores across the board for reading. And as you can see, yellow is a grade level norm. The black line is 1 grade level below that. So they're doing well. Of course, these were I did use their fall scores. So there's a little bit of summer slip, which is to be expected, but generally speaking, they're doing pretty well. The majority of them are achieving above grade level expectations. The same is true for them in language. So their language scores are doing great, and in math. So this is the same group of kids. We've had them for a long time. Every year I make this presentation. Every year I add to their data. Makes me nervous, but they're doing great. And they have consistently had Cute American English as part of their instruction since they were 3 to 5 years old at ISD, in addition to American Sign Language and or auditory oral methods as needed. This is a writing sample. We'll skip it because Nick told me I have to hurry up. Teacher testimonials we're going to skip, which is unfortunate because my videos are fun. And last but not least, I'm going to close with this quote from Maya Angelou, which is, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you do better. And I put the gem in there because Cute Speech has helped us know better and helped us do better in our educational programming here at ISD. And I wouldn't want to go back. So it's been a tough journey, but it's been worth it. And if I can answer any questions about it, you can see it's kind of become my passion project. That's it. I'm done. Did I make it?
You are amazing. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Angela, and thank you for being here again. Absolutely amazing. If you'll end with the video with being your contact information, I'll let
Sure.
that be the end, so that way it started and ended with the
Perfect.
information.
Okay. My name is Angela Kuhn, and the best way to contact me really is probably via my work email. And my email address is angela.kuhn, Kuhn, at Illinois, all spelled out, .gov.
Perfect. I think we're right at 60 minutes. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you all for being here, and anyone watching video recording, please reach out to DCD for any more information, or reach out to Angela directly for any questions. Thank you all.